Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is literally one of the most astonishing glow-ups in all of human history. We're tracing the incredible journey of a man who went from living on a quiet, obscure Mediterranean island to achieving absolute, undeniable continental domination. We're talking about a story packed with raw ambition, bitter struggles, insane courage, and a rise to power that fundamentally redrew the entire map of Europe. Let's get right into it.
Think about it for a second. Can a poor kid, someone who was relentlessly mocked as a foreigner throughout his entire youth, actually grow up to become history's greatest military commander? It sounds totally made up, right? Like a Hollywood script. But it is an absolutely true, epic underdog story. It's the story of how a young outcast eventually humbled kings and shook mighty empires to their core.
Part 1, A Boy from Corsica, The Roots of Resilience. Okay, let's dive into this.
So born on August 15th, 1769, Napoleon entered a world brimming with intense political tension. His home island of Corsica had literally just passed to French control, a transition the fiercely nationalist locals completely despised. Growing up, Napoleon's own family harbored a deep resentment against the French. It's so ironic, isn't it? The boy who would one day become the undisputed emperor of France actually started his life essentially hating it. Now, his early life was shaped by two massive, very different influences. His dad, Carlo, was a lawyer of pretty modest means, but he relentlessly pushed for his kids to get a top-tier education. But it was his mom, Letizia, who truly forged his iron will. She was strictly disciplined, incredibly courageous, and she instilled in young Napoleon this deep resilience. She basically gave him the mental toughness he'd need to endure some really severe hardships down the road. And his childhood? Definitely not normal. While other kids were outside playing tag or hide and seek, Napoleon was inside playing Empire. He completely ignored typical games. Instead, he was obsessing over history and warfare. He completely idolized giants like Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, quietly convincing himself that, one day he was going to join their ranks.
Part 2, The Outsider in France, Forged in the Fire of Ridicule. So that massive childhood ambition, it got put to a brutal test when he was sent away to a French military school. He was just 9 years old. Imagine being a little kid in a strange land, barely able to speak the language fluently. And because of his thick Corsican accent, he sounded totally different. His classmates were ruthless. They mocked him relentlessly, branded him an outsider, and constantly ridiculed him for being a foreigner.
But here's a core lesson in resilience, and this brilliantly illustrates his mindset. Rather than letting the isolation break him, Napoleon weaponized it. He totally withdrew from the petty social drama of his bullies and poured every ounce of his frustration right into his studies. He became absolutely obsessed with the concrete, unbending logic of mathematics and the strategic art of warfare. His teachers caught on fast. They quickly realized they had a literal prodigy on their hands. Because of his extraordinary grasp of calculation and geometry, they immediately funneled him into the artillery corps. Now, this wasn't just about loading heavy cannons. Back then, artillery was the high-tech warfare of the day. It was the one branch where precision, physics, and deep strategic planning mattered above all else. And you know what? His obsessive dedication paid off at lightning speed. In 1785, at the stunningly young age of just 16, he was officially commissioned as a second lieutenant in the French army. 16! Looking at this teenage outcast, nobody, and I mean nobody, could have possibly predicted that he was about to redraw the entire map of Europe.
Part 3, A Nation in Crisis, The Spark of Revolution. Let's move to and see how this builds on a macro scale. While Napoleon was quietly mastering artillery tactics, King Louis XVI's government was teetering right on the edge of total financial collapse. France was a society stretched to the absolute snapping point. You had the royal court living in completely out-of-touch, absolute luxury, while the everyday, ordinary citizens were bearing the crushing weight of massive taxes, soaring prices, and widespread hunger. It was a powder keg. And by 1789, that unbearable tension finally exploded into the French Revolution. The cry of liberty, equality, and fraternity echoed through the streets, violently tearing down centuries of absolute monarchy. But for a lower-class, foreign-born officer like Napoleon, this revolution meant something highly specific. The old, rigid, aristocratic glass ceiling had just completely shattered. Now, what's really interesting about this is that while many established old guard military officers were absolutely terrified of this societal chaos and just fled the country, Napoleon saw the ultimate golden opportunity. In this brand new republic built on merit rather than royal bloodlines, he threw his full support behind the revolutionary government. He was so eager to finally prove his brilliance on the battlefield.
Part 4. The Siege of Toulon, the underdog and the revolution collide.
His massive make-or-break moment finally arrived in 1793. Royalist forces, heavily backed by the mighty British Royal Navy, had seized the critical southern port city of Toulon. This was an existential threat to the new republic. Enter Napoleon. He didn't just blindly order an attack. He methodically analyzed the entrenched enemy defenses, and using his genius for geometry and physics, he designed a breathtakingly bold artillery strategy. His precise cannon placements completely battered the defenses, forced the British fleet to retreat, and he successfully recaptured the city for the Republic. A total masterclass.
Part 5. The Birth of a Legend. From Outsider to National Hero.
The aftermath of Toulon was explosive for his career. Practically overnight, Napoleon transformed from an obscure, ridiculed outsider into a nationwide hero recognized for his immense tactical genius. So the crucial point is how perfectly his personal ascent rode the wave of history. Look at this timeline. Born in Corsica in 1769, a teenage officer by 1785. The revolution unexpectedly creates a meritocracy in 1789, and by 1793, he seizes his ultimate moment at Toulon. Everything just aligned.
But here's the crazy part. As incredible as Toulon was, it was truly just the warm-up. Which leaves us with a massive question. What happens when this brilliant, battle-tested strategist turns his sights on Italy? In our next explainer, we're going to follow this young general as he launches an astonishing campaign that will literally strike fear into the hearts of empires. So what do you think his first move will be? Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.